Howdy, welcome to the Political Science Fiction Podcast, where apparently if I don't speak firmly into the microphone, I can't pronounce my podcast name correctly.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a fairly simple podcast name at this point. It's like, it's not even two words, it's one word mashed, or two words mashed into one word, so this is on you at this point.
It's PoliSciFiPod, the Political Science Fiction Podcast. I'm Kyle, your co-host. I have a speech impediment, apparently. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who would have diagnosed me with that? Not my school. Nope. Okay, who's my co-host? What's your name?
I am Cody.
Okay. Yeah, here's Cody, this strange man who I talk to on the internet every 2 weeks about just for like 2 hours.
If we're lucky,
Yeah. Uh
it's been hit or miss recently.
yeah, it's working on other stuff. Uh but yeah. So this
Oh,
week
that's good work. That worked? Okay.
work and like I've been trying to get done my novel, which is
Oh, I,
yeah.
I was talking about the game I'm playing right in front of me.
Oh,
Sorry, that's on me.
okay. Uh
I'm playing through Elden Ring for the first time, and one of the maps is like a whole gravity fall center.
huh.
So like you're just trying to go through levels, and if you fall and die, you just kind of die.
Huh.
So
Hmm. I try from soft games. I never get past the first level.
okay,
That's just yeah. It's like I feel like every time I die, I've learned exactly one thing about the game, and usually that thing is like, oh, there's a guy around that corner. Oh, there's three guys here.
yeah, this is generally how you're supposed to play it. I think that so the first game I played ever from software while we're here was Bloodborne on the PlayStation 4. I think it came out on, and then it's never been redone since then. So yeah, and that's generally how I played it, was just run around, learn stuff as much as possible, die if I need to, and then come back to it. And that's how I just did an experience farm, and then eventually I caught up to like the level that you're supposed to be able to like walk in and just absolutely like delete everything in front of you, and then that's neither here nor there at this point. So
Yeah, I don't enjoy the gameplay. Anyway, this episode is about Starship Troopers, and
yes,
when and we're gonna talk about why Robert Heinlein's an idiot and why you don't limit the voting demographic. That's
yeah.
yeah.
Um, there's a big word for that, and I'm pretty sure it's disenfranchisement, but I could be
Yes.
wrong.
Yep. No, that's it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Ch-
that is the word.
And it's been done
Um. Yeah. Go
multiple
ahead.
times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Uh, Most recently, I think the biggest argument for disenfranchisement was in the United States with the voter ID rules, was a way of disenfranchising the poorer people who do not have access to like IDs readily.
So yeah, that's actually a good point to talk about here because like that's kind of like a form of I'd call it like soft disenfranchisement. It's like, yeah, you're trying to
Yeah,
accomplish the same goal as like full disenfranchisement, but you're trying to be sneaky about it. To the extent that like some guys will like make several news articles about how that's not really what's happening and like not ignoring like all the like focusing on like oh the voter ID thing, but like ignoring like examples of like closing like not like closing polling stations and not replacing them properly, making like minimizing polling stations so to make voting a big pain in the ass, so only like really dedicated people vote, like and then just like I mean, gerrymandering could also be put into that. Lots of these little tiny
Yes.
things where you shave off a couple votes, and the hope is that like some political ideologies will benefit from having a smaller electorate and having those your voter base shaped by like people who are in the habit of voting, like form like encouraging your voters voting's habits to be more convenient so that the people who vote with you are the ones more likely to vote, and people who don't vote with you are more likely to not vote. It's very complicated, and it's very it can be very difficult to deal with.
And with, I think we talked about this on the podcast before about the, gerrymandering and the utilization of, like, surgical precision of gerrymandering currently being done, because of how we do maps nowadays. It can be very precision like, precise.
It's yeah, it's gotten very like gerrymandering has just gotten so like so sophisticated in this day and age that like you kind of like it got to a point where like even me who was like sort of skeptical about moving away from the sort of I don't know, parliamentary districts, geography based districting of the parliament is somewhat like convinced by the arguments of the guys who do like proportional representation, just because gerrymandering may just be so um like effective now and so difficult, like so effective now that it's just you can't have this sort of the old system anymore. It's just too easy to exploit in the modern era, which is just something I've seriously considered over the last few years. But yeah, more what we're talking about today. Today we're more talking about like hard disenfranchisement, where you've literally said, okay, only certain people can vote. And in the example of Starship
Mhm.
Troopers, they're saying that only people who have served in the military can vote. And like not even like I think even if you read into like the exact specifications how this works, it's not like so a lot of guys in the military, they're not especially particularly the US military. This is different some other places. But you can be in the military but not actually be like a soldier, right? You can be like you have like a desk job essentially. You maybe go through basic, but yeah, it's basically you basically have a desk job. You do some administrative thing, and you're still technically in the army. This is less true if you're maybe more specifically in like the Marines. But even then, even if you are like a guy that's fully trained as a soldier, a lot of fully trained soldiers just do like regular jobs in the military, like driving trucks, doing uh, search and rescue stuff. I think of a guy to listen to online. He went into Marines and his job was he worked water purifiers or
Huh.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I guess that's something that I don't think about, like, that we need
yeah,
as, like, military personnel.
yeah.
Um, my grandfather was a, a cook in the Navy growing up, so I have that little bit, and then I think my, uncle might do search and rescue out of, Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, so
Yeah, and there's a lot of this in the military. Like it's just the reasons for it being stuff like okay, this is a guy you're going to need on the trail. And at some points
mhm.
in some militaries it is just a civilian position, but you just happen they've just in the American way of doing it, you are in the military. Also, there's just stuff like the water equipment operator I was talking about earlier. Most of what he would have done is like go to like very remote locations and do things that like you could never get a private corporation to do because it's just blowing money to do something or other. Um
Mhm.
like technically speaking, strictly necessary, like entirely necessary, but something that needs to be done by the government. So instead of having, and this is a thing people have done before, where like they have volunteer corps where like you take a job and you just do whatever the government needs you to do, which can be like construction or whatever. But I think with particularly with the Americans, they have just guys in the military, like the Army Corps of Engineers, basically, and their job is they build like bridges and shit that's aren't in the like that aren't going to be like used for commercial purposes. Like this needs to be in like a really particular location. Say if you need something in Alaska to get some people from some indigenous like far off remote indigenous community to get them out to get them a road to the next town, you might just do it through them, or like to build an airstrip for yeah, a lot of these end up being like remote locations and like the far end of the country where there's just not a lot of civilization. But
Yeah,
anyway, Heinlein
makes sense.
doesn't include those people in this. You have to be like in combat, like that can be as like a like a like in the Navy sort of thing. Because I think Heinlein was in the Navy. I think I forget what he was in. He was in the military though, so this he would have been able to vote in the idea he's put out. What's that?
Heinlein was the writer, right? Like, he was the writer, right?
Yeah, he did that, but he served in the military like a lot
Writer
of
of the
guys
book
did.
Starship Troopers.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm just making sure we're not talking about the director.
No, 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 we're not that part
I
yet. We're
can't
talking about
remember
the
who
novelist.
directed
Yeah,
Starship Troopers.
yeah. Starship
Uh,
Troopers. There was a movie in the '90s, and it's based off a novel called by the same name by Robert Heinlein. That was written in '59 or '61. I'm forgetting which one. I think it's '61.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, his idea is basically that like you only get citizenship if you've served in a combat role in the military, which is okay. What's the precedent for that? I'll bring up Rome. Rome has a it's not really the same thing. I'm making a bit of a stretch here of like a real world parallel, but yeah, Rome you sort of did get you didn't need it to be a citizen, but you need to serve in the military to be able to run in the political sphere. Like you needed to be like in charge of troops in order to run for the Senate or do any other government major government
Mhm.
position. So that's sort of similar, not really the same thing though.
Sure.
Yeah. Um so yeah, that might yeah, we're going to talk about the movie a little bit later, but I need to talk about the novel in order to get some stuff out of the way. So, why do I find Scott? Why did I refer to Heinlein as an idiot at the beginning of the episode? So, I just think that's a bad idea. And I have a very simple reason for thinking that's a bad idea. See, when you have people that can't vote, they are going to get exploited by the government. That's just the fact of the matter. That's
Yes.
inevitable. Like it might as well be a law of nature, which I never like saying about any political thing, but it's basically inevitable that if you can't vote, you're going to get exploited by the government. Like this is up to and including like people that like you don't think should be able to vote, like children. Like I'm going to say that I'm going to say something. I am genuinely surprised children in the United States of America have rights. I'm not saying that is like a ha ha thing. I'm like genuinely shocked they do. And there are points, there are like literal Supreme Court
Some
cases.
places.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to mention that there is definitely some places in certain industries that children don't have a whole bunch of rights, and one of them being agriculture. Um,
Yeah.
so you can literally hire like a 12-year-old to go out and pick your like fields for you. Like,
Yeah, it's this weird thing where like okay, we need to write something into
Shouldn't
the
be allowed.
law. Yeah, so I think the origin of that is just like, okay, we need something for like, okay, so the kids can help their like their parents do chores on their farm, and they're extending it to just being like, oh, you need parental position to work on some company's farm. So, like, say
Mhm.
what you will, your parents are probably not going to be as rough on you as some asshole hiring children instead of men to do a grown men to do a grown man's job.
Yeah.
And like speaking as like a farm kid, just it can be rough. It can be rough. And I can't imagine doing that same thing about somebody who didn't like having somebody in charge of me in
But
that point in my
you're
life that like didn't like love me and care for me.
yes,
Yeah. Like
but
that.
you're a rancher.
Yeah. But yeah.
So there's a very big difference between somebody doing ranch work and somebody sitting there like filling buckets after buckets after buckets of like apples or
Yeah.
potatoes or
Yeah,
and
that's
also
the
I'd like to point out that a lot of these jobs get away with not only um, hiring children, but they also get away with paying children subpar wages,
which is the
like
end.
less
Yeah.
than minimum wage,
Yeah. Which at the end of the day is the point of
which
all
is the
this.
end goal, of course. But
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
not anywhere on the topic, but they
Yeah.
should change that in the States.
I mean, yeah, like I like literally there was a Supreme Court ruling in United States politics that states that like children are entitled to a jury trial if they need one.
Oh,
Um which means that like before that they weren't necessarily going to get one, which is kind of horrifying when you think about it for 5
so
minutes.
I guess the other option would just be a judge trial, like one
Um
judge.
well, I mean not even that. Like you
How
don't
else do they do trials then?
Okay, so okay, here's the problem with this. I'm going to speak it very plainly. You know all the things that like make trials fair?
Hmm.
Yeah, children until the
Kind of.
Supreme Court ruling happened, children weren't entitled to those.
Okay, but they would still be tried,
Um
but instead of having a trial of peer, I guess that's also really funny because it to have a trial for a jury trial, it has to be a jury of your peers, right?
yeah, yeah, that's a thing. Also
Like
like
how it's written into law. So like 12-year-olds doing trials.
yeah, so like if a 12-year-old got put in like sentenced to the same trial as an adult in like say 1912, the child's not necessarily guaranteed counsel or like proper
Yeah,
yeah, like I cannot stress like literally the most basic shit you need in order for like the law system to function.
representation at that point. Jeez.
Yeah, and just hope that doesn't
Okay.
change real quick.
Something I'm gonna have to look into eventually because that
Oh,
sounds fucking hilarious.
oh god,
Which
yeah.
reminds me of a John Oliver skit recently that was based around um, immigrants who are fighting for children immigrants who are fighting in the United States for citizenship under asylum laws. Um, don't get accurate representation for themselves because it's all rather court appointed lawyers or not. So
Yeah. Oh, that's actually a
people
brilliant
expect
point.
like children to be able to to do to do asylum law essentially,
Yeah. Um
which
that,
is awful and shouldn't happen.
yeah, that's actually a brilliant point. The other people that like often get screwed of this sort of like immigrants, like just people that don't
Yeah.
live in the country, and I'm not even talking necessarily like actually not
Hmm.
even like up like some of these like I'm including like what you'd call like undocumented immigrants in this conversation, but also just like somebody who may or may not have committed a crime, who does not happen to be a citizen of the given country where they committed the crime. Like, that can be very complicated. You're not necessarily entitled to some things that a citizen
Yeah.
would normally be uh, entitled to.
Yes.
Yeah, so here's the point of this. Okay, so in a democracy, um, where the
Sure.
people, or in a democratic republic, if you want to be jerk jerk off about this, I don't know. In the
Yes.
system, in the sort of American or British style systems we have currently, which are the most common forms of democratic government in the world right now, if you are a citizen, you are generally entitled to a vote, which means if the government cannot keep most of you, like a good chunk of you, in line with your mandate, then you're going to lose. If you don't vote, they don't really give a shit. Like, the government doesn't give a shit about you. Um, which,
Mhm.
yeah,
And I think a lot of people are really depending on you not voting.
but even then, it's like, yeah, there's
I'm
two
not
things I'll
gonna
say about
point
that.
point fingers, but I think
Yeah,
it's Republicans.
yeah,
But
yeah. There's 2 points I want to make with that. First, okay, so say it's 1950, and me and yeah, well, let's say it's 1950 Canada. I can
oh,
vote,
geez,
but
I know where this
say,
is going.
yeah, say like, no, you could probably vote in the 50s, or maybe you couldn't. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm actually not sure because I think they officially
In the
enfranchised.
50s,
They fully
no, I don't think
enfranchised
I can
First
vote.
Nations people in the 1960s under our boy John D. Diefenbaker.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes, but how do they do it? So from my father's side, my father's white, yes,
yeah.
I'd be able to vote. If
Um,
it was based on my mother's line of, heritage, then I would not be able to vote because,
yeah.
my mother is indigenous.
Yeah, and there's like, I
So I
actually
don't
picked the most
I
comp.
think I could vote at that point.
Yeah, I sort of apologize to the audience because I did also pick the most complicated version of this example, because this is like, because especially in
Mhm.
like the example we're talking about, there's like, oh, if you do this, and like, if your father's one thing, and like, it's, and also like, you can vote if you've like gone through this whole process. I've actually picked the most complicated version of this
For
example.
people who don't understand what we're talking about,
Yeah.
basically, First Nations people or indigenous people were not given, certain rights under, I wanna say, the Treaty Act, but I could be wrong on what it was,
Indian Act maybe, but
based on I I'm not saying blood quantum formula, but the, like, Canadian equivalent to blood quantum,
um yeah, it's,
because
again, I
quote,
picked,
unquote, "Canada" didn't have blood quantum, but
yeah. I Oh god, I apologize. I picked the worst example because it's so complicated. Um, yeah, it's literally like, if you do like, there are First Nations people who like full-blooded First Nation people who can
well,
vote,
also,
but like, you got to like do a bunch of
this is
bullshit
actually,
and like
I think,
revoke, like, renounce your like
very
treaty rights or some shit. It's dumb. It was dumb.
yeah, and I think this actually harkens back to, the original disenfranchisement here, because I think Indigenous people were given the right to vote after World War One, too, but they had to once again renounce their residency,
Yeah.
and they had to serve in World War One.
Oh, and even on top of that, here's another layer to this.
If
If you're talking about
if
like,
I'm not wrong.
if you're talking about the 1860s rules, you couldn't vote unless you own land. And according to the federal government at that time,
Mhm.
First Nations people couldn't own land. So, yeah, that's
Either
doubly.
could black people.
I mean,
Well, okay,
yeah,
what is the 1/3 rule for African Americans in the
oh,
United States?
totally different thing. I don't know if we're
Because
gonna bring
they
it
were
up, but it's not really.
they were seen as one-third of a person, and I think the slave owners were allowed to cast
So it's
3/5.
3/5, and that's the number that would have counted toward like the population of of a state. Like it's a census statistic, not so much like a it's a like in legal terms it's a metaphor, but you count them as 3/5 of a person on like censuses. It's sort of a good metaphor for talking about how the sort of rights that African American peoples had in the pre abolition United States. But it's not strictly speaking a normal thing. But yeah, 3/5 is like the number your count. Like if you have 100,000 slaves in a state, you would count 3/5 of those 100,000 toward the population of that state in the census. They do this so that they can increase the population of that state, so that they can get more electoral college seats.
So it's not based around votes.
Yeah, I mean electoral votes, but
So
that's
if
not
I
what we're
owned
talking
more
about today.
slaves, I would have more votes, is essentially okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
got it,
So anyway, my point
kind of.
was, before I uh okay, say I have a group of people. Okay, say there's a group of people that can vote and a group of people that can't vote. I like the government doesn't, as we've established, the government doesn't have any incentive to do anything for people that cannot vote in a republic, in a like a democratic republic style government. Now, I might totally
Sure.
sympathize with like a group with with people that don't vote, with or so there's people that can't vote. But at the end of the day, it's a battle between the people that give a shit about the people that can't vote and the people that don't. Like the people that can't vote have no ability to throw their own weight around, which is why they end up getting
Sure.
consistently fucked over.
Okay.
Yeah. Um
I think I see where you're kind of going with this.
that so when we see the beginning of this novel, our main character Juan Rico is not his family is not are not citizens, but are somehow very rich. And that's just not going to be a thing. Like you can't have there's not going to be a privileged class of people that can't vote but get like a lot of like the only people that are going to get like a lot of benefits and extra benefits in this situation are people who can vote. Like you're not going to get, because contrary to popular belief, the government needs to put money into things in order to like incentivize like begin a growth of wealth in a certain class. That's why we have a middle class at all. Because the reason we have a middle class at all is because a bunch of guys got a bunch of small farms and were able to like use that to gain wealth and also vote for more rights, because in at a certain point, at the expense of the First Nations people, I'll add, a lot of people got the right to vote that would have never gotten the right to vote for, and that's how we ended up in like some of our more progressive periods of politics.
Hmm.
But yeah, yeah, that's the number one thing I don't buy about the lore of this movie, is that like non-citizens are going to be rich on their own. Like this, no, these civilians are almost certainly attached to some like veteran who is able to use his benefits to benefit them. And they are almost certainly in a very precarious situation if they lose if they lose contact with that reliable source. Um, Now in real life, the equivalent is going to be like in the pre-suffragette days would be like a really well-off woman in like a pre emancipation days would be like a free African American man who's managed to get it made make a business make a get his own good small business and make money, which those things do happen, but they're not going to be the norm.
Yeah.
We're very much getting presented like in the Starship Trooper novel, like in the Starship Troopers, we're very much getting an idea of being a civilian in a state where they are not citizens, a very inflated idea of how these people's lives are going to be. Um, because in real life, this relationship is called citizen and subject. If you're not a citizen of a country, you are but you still live there. You're a subject of that country, not a civilian, because that's what that word means. Is like you being someone who is subject to the state because you live there, because you work there. You're a subject. You're not a civilian. You're like these people are subjects of the state. And that was
Hmm.
the relationship of how things worked in Rome, which was the example I brought up earlier. You had a bunch of people that were citizens, but you had a bunch of other people who were at best subjects and at worst slaves. I kind of don't want to give Heinlein too much shit about this, but I'm going to be careful because I also don't want to give him too much credit.
Sure.
Yeah, because I don't know that he's as bad as like an Ayn Rand or Ayn Rand, however you pronounce it, because she's just the worst.
Ayn Rand sounds correct, and I don't exactly know what she did. I know the name, but I think, like, her most famous work was Atlas Shrugged,
Yeah,
right?
that or the Fountainhead depends on who you ask.
And I haven't read either of those, so
Okay, so the thing I think they are like those are like books about how like one super smart guy does everything and he's so super smart like like it's just like just terrible. They're just like super Gary Stew books where like it's about how handsome and smart the guy who the main character is and how the world can't live without him, and it's rough. Now the thing that
okay.
separates Heinlein from her is that Heinlein has talent. Like he can actually write good story. Like Ayn Rand's stuff isn't very good. Like I can't.
Sure, but that
Yeah.
to me, it just seems like a pulp fiction-y, like, too science fiction-y to, like, really put across a good point.
Yeah.
Although I think the book or the movie might not do the book justice, and
Okay.
if I read the book, maybe I would think differently,
So
but
yeah,
I'm
that's the
not
funny thing. Paul Verhoeven, the director of the movie, has directed the novel entirely different from the book. Because
okay.
yeah, Paul Verhoeven is doing this as a satire.
Okay.
Yeah, Paul Verhoeven's very much about how like, oh, this was all a stupid idea. This government's incompetent. They're gonna get everyone in here killed. They get victories because they just throw shit at it until they manage to do it, and it's just awful. Like he's just
Sure.
like literally he's modeling all the uniforms after Nazi uniforms because he's trying to imply that these guys are Nazis.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't Heinlein's politics aren't great.
Yeah.
Some of them are like
How's this science fiction?
see, I find him a bit I think he's a bit overrated.
Because like, the way I look at it is he mi
That's just my opinion,
yeah,
but
so here's my thinking. I think I can't remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, but, like, Zurg from Craft would be, like, based off of, like, his, like, bug planet type ordeal.
oh god, yeah. No, this like this the book of this is like super influential.
Mhm. super soldiers and like power packs and stuff like that was all like one of his inventions. So like some of the like tropes of science fictions could be accredited to him. Although I'm not exactly 100% certain because it's like the 1950s and science fiction is like really starting to take off. So I'm not saying he's the first person to do a couple of these things, but like he's one of the most recognizable for it.
He is genuinely like one of the first guys to do a lot of this stuff. Like he invents the term space marine.
Mhm,
He in the novel, the Starship Troopers are like probably wearing something that would be a lot more recognizable as like something from the Space Marines from 40K. Like they're wearing a very
mhm,
subdued outfit in this in the movie. Like in the novel, they're wearing something a
sure.
lot more along those lines.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mostly because I think yeah, this way like in my opinion, a lot of the gear that they're wearing in this reminds me of like the rebels from the opening sequence of Star Wars,
yeah,
except for like a little bit more padded in the movie at least.
mhm. Yeah.
Not talking about the books. So
Yeah. I think also these costumes literally get reused in Power Rangers Lost Galaxy.
yeah. Oh God.
Yeah, there's an episode. So Lost Galaxy takes place on a space station, and the regular soldiers on that space station have the Starship Trooper armor.
Intentionally,
Uh,
like was Power Rangers trying to make a statement, or they just couldn't afford more costumes,
I mean,
or both?
probably not. They were just buying used costumes, I think.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they were like, "Hey, can we borrow these?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, whatever."
Hasn't been used since the 1970s, but
Well, no, the movie's the '90s, so this is like 3 years later.
oh,
Yeah, this
okay.
is Lost Galaxy. This is '99 or something.
And I'm assuming they probably just borrowed the costume design and not the costumes themselves.
No, I think it was literally the same costumes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think so. But anyway,
Power Rangers is weird.
yeah, I love it though. That's good. Like, it's precious. Yeah, so Heinlein does do a lot of stuff that's very influential to the genre, but I think like some of the specifics of his books don't, especially like the big long like especially like this and like Stranger in a Strange Land. Like that's just cringe. Stranger in a Strange Land is just like a straight up. It's like, oh, this is a story about a guy who creates a sex cult and saves the world. That's literally it, and he becomes God. Yeah, that's it. That's what Stranger in a Strange Land is.
Isn't
Yeah,
it's just Dune without the sandworms?
or any of the exciting things from Dune. Yeah, Heinlein stumbled so Frank Herbert could soar.
Fair
Uh,
enough.
yeah.
Back to the topic on hand here. What would you be drafted for?
Uh, well, I think I have a university
Like
degree.
if I as a government, yeah, yeah, that's
I
what I'm saying
Yeah, I
though.
think
Like I want a transferable university degree.
I think that gets me an officer position if
Yes.
I can pass my PT or whatever, which I can't.
Yeah. I don't know
No,
what
like
your PT is. Oh,
uh,
BT,
physical training.
basic training.
Well, physical training, but
Okay. So basic training.
also yes. I mean, there's that. There's a few things that might disqualify me. I don't know. I'm probably not quite old enough to get out of it, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm also a conscientious objector, but I'm an atheist conscientious objector, so that's a little bit harder to do. I'm
I
also a
think we're on the cusp
yeah.
of
I
being
could
too
maybe talk
old.
my way. Maybe depends on the situation.
So my opinion, there would be three things that I needed. First of all, um, I don't want to be in active duty. I guess if it was a war, then it wouldn't be like maybe if like if we're not talking about like an actual draft for war and we're talking about mandatory military service, my demands would be free education, housing once I'm out of the military. Like they will buy me a single person occupant house and healthcare. Those are like my three demands.
Man, see,
But
a chunk of that you can get if you serve your full term.
yes, but I
Yeah.
would be paying for it, and I don't think like citizens' healthcare for military vets is exactly like super good. And
Yeah.
I guess my other one would probably be like education. Like I want a
Yeah.
free full 4 year degree.
That I don't. I'm not an army recruiter. I can't tell you the what you get for joining the army. So, yeah, if you want to know more information about joining the army, go to your local recruiting office and walk right past it and go to the ice cream parlor next door. You deserve ice cream instead of joining the military. And if that's all I needed to do to convince you not to join the military, then you probably shouldn't have been there in the first place. But yeah, Heinlein, yeah, some of his politics are like of the time, and like he does seem sort of like racial inclusive. Like, I refer to the main character in the book as Juan Rico because in the book he's actually Filipino.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think I read that.
yeah, Heinlein doesn't believe in like segregation, but he also him and his family's foundation volunteered for Barry Goldwater, who yeah, wasn't into that.
Into what?
For those of you not in the know, Barry Goldwater is yeah, when he gets runs for president, I think that's when you can argue that like the Republicans stopped being cool. I guess Nixon ran
Okay.
before him, so but I think definitively when Barry Goldwater ran, they stopped being cool. This is where like the Southern strategy starts to pick up and sort of bunch of stuff. Heinlein identifies as a libertarian, which yeah, you know how those people are. Some of them are all right, but a lot of them
Yeah.
but a lot of them have made their choice.
Hmm.
And yeah, he starts leaning a lot more conservative toward the end of his life. He also like campaigns against nuclear weapon bans and does a pro Vietnam something or other. So he was pro Vietnam War, which puts him on firmly on the less cool side the of the science fiction community. He's one of those he does believe in free love, but like a lot of those guys it was just like, "Oh yeah, free love, but it only applies to straight men." It's very much yeah, they're not the fun kind. I think apparent some guys so in Stranger in a Strange Land, they make a the guy from Stranger in a Strange Land, the stranger from a strange land makes his own religion, and there were some guys who made that into a real religion, and the wife of the guy who forms that religion is the one who coins the term polyamory. So yeah, that's
Okay.
fun. Moving on a bit. So why me and Paul Verhoeven realized this was a dumb idea, obviously, just because yeah, this is sort of built upon this really nonsensical myth that veterans can know everything and are going to make our country and like automatically know everything that makes the country better. Which
Hmm.
granted, like I'm not speaking ill of veterans, I'm not, but yeah, it doesn't like mean you know everything. And like there's a lot of veterans that are good.
Yeah.
I'd say most probably, but it's not a catch-all way to solve. Like he's obvious. Like Heinlein's also the other thing I'm going to mention is like I don't know that Heinlein necessarily like fully with his whole heart believes everything that happens in this book should be how the actual government should work. I believe some of this he could be convinced away from. He does have rough political views, and also views that were different depending on what decade of his life you're talking about. But yeah, and the other thing is like this all comes across like very fascistic, because fascists love to like glorify the military to like this incredibly extremes extent, and Starship Troopers absolutely does it. And this is a book that was written because Robert Heinlein was annoyed they were gonna like ban nukes, which yeah, we're gonna do an episode on nukes at some point to explain why that's more of a bit of a dumb
Yeah,
idea.
that's
Yeah.
completely fair.
Yeah, Heinlein's of the opinion that like, oh, we need nukes because if we don't have nukes, there's gonna be war, or they'll use their nukes against us or something like that.
Sure.
It's not great logic. And I think this is
Has
also
it ever been?
no, no, it's really just Kissinger's logic. Like in this, yeah, and this is going on
Okay,
tandem
fair
with
enough.
like Henry Kissinger like writing his articles and like starting to get the United States on this bandwagon that's just like, oh yeah, we don't have enough nuclear missiles. The Russians have more nuclear missiles than us, and we need more nuclear missiles. Even though, like, if anyone used them, like, it would annihilate the Earth, and like it would defeat the purpose of defeating the Soviets in the first place. Yeah, and there's the whole
Yeah.
argument of like, because like basically the argument is like, oh, because we have all these missiles, no one will use them. Which
Mhm.
I don't know, maybe, but it's also kind of, I don't think you can, like, even in like a dream scenario where it's like a totally one-sided nuclear strike against another country, I think you just fuck up the planet at that point. I think if you entirely irradiate another country, it's or another continent even maybe, it's not going to affect the earth very well. Like you've probably just fucked everyone at that
Yeah.
point.
I think
Um
I think I think we've given up a lot of nuclear fallout in the years since we dropped bombs on, I shouldn't say we, since the
yeah.
United States dropped bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But um yeah, I mean it's probably not great for the environment. What I'm saying is I was gonna say I think that the radiation of Chernobyl was worse than like what a like modern day nuke would do to the environment. But like
Yeah.
once again, we've got very little like evidence of
Well,
anything anymore because the last time we've used a nuke was like maybe 56.
uh well, I mean, I think there's been like underground tests, but no, I mean, Chernobyl is different from a nuclear bomb because like a nuclear power plant going into meltdown like that is like way worse, because the bomb isn't like designed to like keep nuclear reactions going. Like it's doing its business and is being
Mhm.
done with it. The nuclear power plant melting down is something that's going to
Okay,
be
fair enough.
like going to keep heating up until it like melts into the Earth's core, which is the problem more than like
Huh.
the actual radiation.
Okay,
We'll talk about this in the nuclear episode, but or the super
fair
weapons
enough.
episode. I've already started doing my research for that. It'll happen eventually. Um, but yeah, but yeah, yeah, that's part of the thing that I think that this is what that the thing that where what Verhoeven's on about when he directs the movie and makes it into a big satire about how stupid this idea is that like, well, yeah, it's just like militaristic posturing, because like, again, I'll say it once, I'll say
Mhm.
it again, being enthusiastic about the military does not make you good at the military. Making your
Yeah,
military seem macho does not make you good at the military. No amount of like presentation makes your military good. No amount of Not even real to an extent. Not
What
even the
about
amount of money you put into it makes it good.
what about homoerotic volleyball games? So
Oh yeah, that's how you win the war.
okay,
Yeah, but yeah, you know why
it's
Frederick the
a
Great was so
Top
good at
Gun
war.
reference. If nobody got that,
Yeah, no, you know why Frederick the Great was so war. He was doing a bunch of shirtless volleyball games with the boys. That's why he was so good at war.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, just yeah. That's yeah the entire military, like he was so good at war, like this gay German was so good at war that they like gave Germany a giant unearned military reputation of military prowess because Frederick the Great did okay at war for a few years.
I don't know who that is.
uh he's the guy that unifies
I'm
Germany.
assuming he's German.
Yeah, he unifies Germany.
Sure.
Or he's actually, I think it's his dad that
Like in a
unifies Germany.
good way.
uh Meh. I mean, it didn't turn out well in the long run.
I mean, like you can unify whatever the fuck you want. I don't know if it's like a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it leads to some problems in like 70 years. I'm forgetting my time frame on this. Yeah, I think it leads to some problems
Okay.
in about like 1914, 1913. You know them. About that time. Un-
Yeah.
Yeah. Until then, it's pretty good. After him, there's this guy called Bismarck, and he does some cool shit.
I think I see what you're saying, but okay.
Yeah, that's a big thing to notice. Like, that's a big thing to point out. Just like being enthusiastic about the military doesn't make you good at it. I think even like being in a previous war doesn't make you good at the military. Also, another observation: if you're a military guy, if the biggest liars on earth are generals who have lost a war. Like that is a man who, like, you show me a general who lost a war, I will show you the biggest liar on the face of the earth. Because that's all they ever do after. Like if they live through the war,
Mhm.
they write a bunch of books about how, oh, it wasn't my fault. Oh, the other side had so much more resources than me. I was so cool. I did big fancy cavalry charge. Yep, sirree. I was really good at war. Remember how I beat up those guys once? Don't pay attention to my terrible casualty rate and all the things I said during the years between 1861 and 1865. I definitely was really good at war, and the war wasn't about slavery. I was definitely really good at it. I'm really cool. Don't pay attention to those really good guys, the cool guys in the white hoods, who I'm totally not a part of, but I think are really cool. But yeah, I'm not a part of them. Please don't throw me in jail. I didn't. I'm just a little guy. That was that's an extreme reference. I'm not explaining it.
I don't think you need to at that point in time.
Uh, yeah, yeah. The point is, if you lose a war as a general, it's kind of your fault, and you got to spend the rest of your life explaining why it's not your fault. Because otherwise, what are you, just a fucking idiot?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully, I think a lot of the World War II generals died on the bad guys' side. I don't know any of them were. Did Rommel live through the war? I don't know. Anyway, anything
Or
else I
they
should
were
bring up?
captured.
Yeah, they were captured, but I mean, probably in jail. Anyway, anything else I should bring up?
Yeah, I think we just one last like little point, and I don't know if this is implied or heavily hinted at in the um Starship Troopers movie. Like there was definitely like a false flag attack on the city, right? Like, am I reading into that too much? Like the meteorite that apparently destroyed the city in the movie that actually happened, or was it like we need to go to war with these bug people, so we need a way to justify it, so we like put a
I
reason forth.
I don't know. In the book, it's almost certainly not.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
I don't know, because yeah, I see your point.
Like in the okay, so if anybody knows about the game Helldivers and like really gets into the lore of the movie, like the Helldivers universe, only reason why America is attacking the bug people and Helldivers is because they want the oils from the bugs so that they can sell it for a profit, and the automatons that they're fighting in the Helldivers universes are like slaves that are trying to free themselves from like the American rule or the super American rule. So I was just wondering if there was like a deeper meaning for us killing the bugs in the Starship Troopers universe too. So
Um,
or if it was just exactly like that, like aliens invaded and we needed to defend ourselves.
I mean, I think there's some disagreement there because I mean, Heinlein's ideas of this and Verhoeven's ideas of this are very different.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think I see your point because I mean they are the attack on the United Federation of Earth is like or whatever it's called is like just an asteroid clanging into the Earth, and they claim that's happening because
Hmm.
the bugs are shooting like plasma
Of
at
the
the
bugs.
asteroids and like aiming them at Earth, which
Hmm.
that's I don't know. I see why you would think that's a stretch, because like scientifically that seems really complicated.
Yeah,
Yeah, and like at that point, also, why wouldn't if you were capable of doing that, why wouldn't you just do it on a bigger rock and just do a whole extinction event?
yeah. But I mean, ultimately, I think if you're going based off of the movie version of Starship Troopers, you could argue that they needed to infiltrate the bug planet to get Neil Patrick Harris's character there to see if that they can control the bug people to the extent that they're uh, working force for Ultra Earth at this point. But that's maybe me reading into it a little bit too much too. So I think there's a lot of interpretations of the novel. So
And the movie,
mhm.
and I think they're trying to make like spin-offs of the movie, which like play it more to the novel. Which I mean, Verhoeven would say that's a very bad idea because yeah, Verhoeven does not care for Heinlein. If I haven't made that clear,
Yeah, I don't know how deep the movies go after the initial movie
yeah,
because I didn't watch any of the sequels, so I don't
yeah, me
exactly
neither.
know where they ultimately go with the storyline. So
I'm just seeing if Verhoeven directs the second one. Nope.
fair enough.
I don't know. I think I've gotten my point across.
Yeah,
But yeah, the point is, yeah, you can't have a functioning democracy unless everyone is able to vote.
yeah,
I think anyone who claims otherwise is entirely full of shit.
yes,
Yeah.
or has
Uh,
skin in the game to be making these claims.
yeah. I mean, those guys would argue that like if you I mean, those are the people that would argue against me are the people type of people that would be just like, oh, if you don't own land, you don't have enough skin in the game to care about how the country goes.
Or if you weren't in the military, you don't have enough skin in the game to.
Yeah, yeah. Usually,
Like, I guess the borderline, like the longer statement here is like that if you're fighting for your country, then like obviously you care more for your country, so that you should be able to vote. And if
yeah.
you don't fight for your country, then you hate your country, and you shouldn't get the right to vote.
Which I mean, to be fair to Heinlein, it's less insane than like the usual actual version of these arguments go through, which is just like only landowners should be able to vote, which is the closest equivalent to this we get.
Mhm.
And like, yeah, I'd say that Heinlein's argument is better than that. It's also better than like JD Vance's position, which is that like, oh, you shouldn't be able to vote if you don't have kids. Yeah, you can fuck right off with that. That's none of the like these like this argument always comes down to like, oh, if you don't fulfill X thing, you don't really have any incentive to like want the country to be better. These people have like very specific
Dumb.
ideas of like the sort of motivations that are required to be able to get the vote. Um, they like for some reason it's always beyond them that like someone who doesn't own land or wasn't in the military or doesn't have kids would like have any incentive to vote for a better future or anything like that. And certainly, like especially in JD Vance's case, it's not like anyone would want to vote for policies that like would say, let's just say, make it easier for them to have kids. Like maybe they don't feel the certain administration is going to facilitate a version of the world where they can have a healthy family, so they're going to hold off until they can get more ability to get more resources to have that family. Because yeah, that's
Yeah.
I think that's really a big big issue. Is just like, oh yeah, you can't afford to have 4 kids. It's very expensive. And maybe if you made it cheaper to have 4 kids, maybe people would have 4 kids more often.
Yes.
Yeah, hint hint.
Or alternative options to having kids, because like I think the point he's trying to make is Kamala Harris isn't like a fit ruler because she doesn't have children, but she has like 2 adopted children from like her husband's like previous
Yeah, they're her
relationship.
stepkids.
So just what a fucking weird man. Just a weird man. Oh no.
That's my theory about how like if
It,
Trump loses again this time, it's because he couldn't like it'll prove to me that like you need to run a person of color every time because they just cannot help themselves but to do like these weird racist things against like people of color. And I think that's really why Obama run, is because you can't really like ignore the fact that every other week on Fox News they're just like, was did Obama really go to Columbia College? Here's this one random dipshit who doesn't remember him, and that's going to be our proof.
yeah. And like in stark contrast to like Tim Walz. I really like Tim Walz.
Yeah, he seems all
Um
right.
like JD Vance is just a fucking idiot.
Yeah,
And that's not even getting into like the really weird stuff about him like fucking couches or like whatever
yeah,
else has been brought up against JD Vance. Like Tim Walz is just like so bulletproof, and like to an extent so is like Kamala Harris. Like the best thing that like the Trump campaign has brought up against her is like she sometimes rambles and like she's biracial like and keeps on bringing up her like middle class family roots, which is like not horrible from like Trump, who's like just like randomly spewing bigoted shit at this point. So
it's one of those things. And I mean, like, there's stuff wrong with Harris and Walls, but it's stuff that's like wrong with like most of your average Democratic politicians. And I mean that in the way I'd say it,
mhm.
not in the way the Republicans would say it. Anyway, I think that's a bit of bit of we're basically on our way out. Just uh just a little announcement, like because this was in the news lately, and we're just going to bring it up. The state of Missouri has more or less murdered a man called Marcellus Williams. He was going. They were in the process of overturning his false conviction, or very likely false conviction of a murder that they didn't have him placed at. They found like bodily like DNA at the scene that was not his. They don't really seem to have any evidence that he did it. And he died tonight on day of recording, September 24th. And they
Death
were on
row.
their track to to reverse that. And a new Missouri government showed up and reversed all that and rescheduled the execution. And yeah, now he has been killed by the state of Missouri. And the Supreme Court did nothing to save him.
Awful.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. And I hate to bring it up, but he I don't think he's the first in the
No, no,
States.
he's not. But this is a really bad example. Like this was straight up a guy they were present like they were like if the courts had been allowed to do as they would like had been able to work uninterrupted, he never would have died. But the governor stepped in and pushed this forward so that he could pretend to be tough on crime. And now they've
Wow.
murdered an innocent man, probably almost certainly. Maybe like an off chance, but no, it's almost certainly they murdered an innocent guy. It's just a really bad example. The Supreme Court sat around and did nothing because apparently in the United States, it is not a violation of your civil rights to be murdered as an innocent man by the state government by execution. Yeah, if you live in Missouri, do with that as you will responsibly. Yeah, do what you want to do. Do what should be done responsibly. I'm not gonna incur. I'm not gonna encourage any illegal acts. Despite the fact that like this makes you,
Yep.
which yeah,
And just definitely start looking into, uh, I think it's the Freedom Project.
Innocence Project is I think
If that really makes you angry, the Innocence
yeah,
Project
yeah. This is that's the
is what
thing
I'm
I'm
talking about. Yes.
yeah keeping in for notes. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about that because that's really fucked that that's a thing that happened. Yeah, just one of the ways that like the American legal system in itself is like very broken, and it's also
Innocent until proven guilty should extend
well,
to the
yeah, he
extent
went through the trial. He was declared
of
guilty, but he almost certainly wasn't, given like
overtures.
recent evidence. Yeah,
Yep.
and American governors do have power to pardon people. It was well within his power not to do this, and he not only they not only did it, but they pushed it forward, and it need not have happened, and it did.
Huh.
So not only is whoever presumably committed that murder back when he was sentenced, not only is that person still out there, but there's now another one out there. So and you know who that guy is, and you can do your proper channels to do complaints. I don't know what sort of things you can do about that to get like the governor recalled or something, but yeah, it's sort of unacceptable.
Fair enough. That's a
Yeah.
good call to action. I think we should
Yeah.
do more of those.
Also, on like a little sillier one, I guess the BC conservative leader is just like a full on conspiracy theorist. So don't vote conservative if you live in BC in BC provincial elections, because that guy's just like full on vaccine denial and has like been playing to conspiracy theories and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another one of the trials that I'm currently waiting to see how things go over because like we're stuck in Saskatchewan and we're stuck with the SAS party for the time being.
Oh yeah, I
Um
guess that election's coming up too soon if you're in Saskatchewan. Make sure you know where you're supposed to vote.
yeah, Manitoba just went NDP and so did BC.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of waiting to see like and I guess Alberta was NDP before this and then they went back to conservatives, but I kind of don't I'm not going to say fault like the conservative government, but like it's Alberta.
Yeah.
So like they've been
Um
conservative for
yeah.
majority of their history, I'm going to assume.
I mean going back
So
a
I'm kind
long
of just waiting to
ways.
see how Manitoba handles under NDP governance and SAS party. The problem is currently the SAS party is basically just running on an anti uh Jagmeet Singh uh rant at this point in
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, SAS
Like that's their whole policy.
Mhm. yeah, Saskatchewan provincial government is or Saskatchewan provincial elections are coming up soon. Uh yeah, make sure you know where to vote if you're in out there. And yeah, do obviously, I mean, vote for whoever you want. The SAS party has been more or less getting a little bit weaker every election. I mean, they have a long way to go. Yeah, keep digging in there. It'll happen eventually,
Yeah,
probably. But
I think I was gonna say I think I would settle if they got rid of Mo. I'd like
yeah,
to see like a fresh, clean slate without Mo. But even at that, like I still wouldn't vote for him. Like,
yeah, no, probably not. Anyway,
would be interesting.
yeah,
But
yeah, that's the
fingers
show.
crossed.